Hello and welcome to another Tuesday Talk with Ruby Reese. My name is Killian. I am co-founder at Ruby Reese and at dognutrition.ie, and I will also be your podcast host. This week, we'll be speaking about a really interesting topic, one all about human emotions like blame and guilt and how they crop up all over the dog world. So it's going to be a topic that's really interesting for the whole dog community, including dog professionals and also guardians and owners of dogs. Before we launch into that topic and let you listen into the chat that I had with our very special guest, I also have an announcement from the Ruby Reese side. We have been working on something really, really interesting that will, be of interest to lots of you in the dog community, both professional and really interested dog guardians. We will be launching Ruby Reese Academy with a course that simplifies and explains all of the basics that you might need around dog nutrition. While the course has been designed for professionals, we know that there are some really interested and engaged dog guardians that listen into this podcast. And as there are no prerequisite knowledge, expectations from our side for you to take part, it may also be really interesting for you. So you can find out more about that on our social media channels, particularly on Instagram, or indeed via our website, ruby-reese.com. Without further ado, I would now like to introduce you to the guest speaker, who is Catherine Griffin, no stranger to this podcast. And we're delighted to have her back speaking about all of these human emotions that get tangled up into the dog world. So now I would like to invite you to listen into the chat that I had with Catherine. Hello, Catherine. Welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing, Killian?
I'm very good. For anyone that may not know you yet, and that by the way, welcome to the podcast if you don't know Catherine, because she's been back a number of times at this stage. Would you do us the pleasure of introducing yourself briefly?
Of course. My name is Catherine Griffin. I am a certified dog behaviour consultant with the IAABC and the founder of a multi-collaborative organisation called Snout and About in
Thank you
Ireland.
very much. In Ireland, absolutely. Thank you so much. So we were kind of chatting back and forth about a couple of different topics, and one kind of stuck. And I suppose it's one that maybe we don't always touch upon, particularly in a professional context. So I'm delighted that you decided to take on yet another difficult topic. And speak a little bit about blame and guilt in the, I suppose, in the dog world. So thank you for that. I suppose a good place to start is, how do we even see blame, shame and guilt showing up in dog training and dog behaviour conversations with clients?
Oh, we see it all the time. And it's usually something that my clients would first say to me. They're like, oh, I feel that this is my fault. I know I did this wrong and I should have done this, or et cetera, et cetera. And blame, shame, and guilt, like they're all essentially quite interlinked. So blame usually begins with, blame's more of an external piece. So blame is, it was the breeder, it was the rescue, it was the past trainer. So blame is something you project outwardly. It's the dog is stubborn. Could be the dog's fault.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we're looking at the guilt side of things, that's kind of, blame starts to then internalize into guilt. I have done something wrong. This is my fault. Or I know I shouldn't have, and I probably got things wrong when they were a puppy and I didn't socialize them enough. So then all of that starts becoming internal, which ends up in shame, which is where you start to apply labels to yourself. Like, I'm a bad dog owner, or I made so many mistakes, and you start to really internalize everything. And we see it show up so much. And I think it's when it gets to that state of shame, that's when most people actually start to reach out and look for help, because they've kind of gone through the process of all those different vulnerabilities of outward projection, trying to find fault. And the human brain is wired to do this as well. And that's what's the name for it? Control bias. So if we can't control something, we instantly start projecting outwardly
Hmm.
our frustrations and finding reason for it. So there's a gump of human psychology around this stuff and how it happens. But typically, yeah, most people start all the time with, I know I did something wrong. I know this is my fault. And my dog is behaving like this. And unhelpfully, they get told that by friends, family members,
Hmm.
other dog professionals. So,
Yeah, and I suppose it's important to point out as well, I'm guessing there's a huge difference between a fact-finding mission and trying to outline what might have been a contributor to a certain behavior, certain issue that someone might be having. And then, like, I guess it's the emotional side really is how we feel about things with blame, shame, and guilt, right?
yeah, absolutely. And it is important because there are factors that influence behavior, and sometimes that is to do with the things that we've done or
Hmm.
didn't do. But behavior is way too complex and multifaceted for it to be just the owner's fault of something that did or didn't happen.
Hmm.
And everybody gets it wrong with their dog. Doesn't matter if you're a new dog owner, it's your first dog, or if you're a behavior consultant and you're with your third dog. I get things wrong all the time because we're human. And I
Hmm.
think there is enormous pressure to be perfect as a human. And I think for many people, dogs can feel like a reflection of themselves and their own self-worth as well.
Hmm.
So if the dog's getting something wrong, it's our fault. And, it can trigger a lot of really difficult emotions for some people if their dog isn't what they expected
Hmm.
and if things
Yeah.
aren't going right. And then you get all that inward self guilt piece. And essentially, it's too complex for it to rest with the owner's what the owner's history with the dog of what they did or what they didn't do right. Um, and ultimately, anybody seeking support is already one of the best dog owners in the world because they're trying to get it right.
Hmm.
So even if there were past misdemeanors using like aversive equipment or scolding or hitting the dog on the nose or anything like that, it's irrelevant really because we're at the point now where we're trying to get it right.
Yeah.
So I think there's a responsibility of professionals on my side as well to not use blame
Hmm.
when addressing these things with our clients.
And I suppose it's probably fair to say as well that there's no one guidebook of doing things with every single dog because dogs are individuals, because we are individuals, and because our households are kind of unique. There's no real one guidebook to say by day 11 of a puppy's life, they should be doing this. And if you haven't done this by day 28, then, you're missing a trick here. Like I'm presuming from all of the podcasts that we've done and the info that I've managed to soak up from amazing guests like yourself, I think it's quite difficult to say, these are all of the steps, and if you follow all of them to the T by the day, by the hour, then you're going to have the absolute perfect dog that you imagined.
Yeah, and that's it. It's not cookie cutter. There is no cookie cutter model. And professionals have tried for years and are still trying to get like the cutter model of what you do for your dog at XYZ points of its life or when it presents with XYZ challenging behaviors. It doesn't exist.
Mhm.
We can only ever do the best we can with the information available to us at the time. But there is such an enormous societal pressure on dogs to perform. And even when we look at it culturally, we have a dog growing up in Dublin City and we're expecting it to behave like a dog growing up in a rural countryside, where there's all those other environmental factors going on that are influencing or shaping or driving that animal's behavior. And the goal is perfection. I actually blame social media a lot for this in the way
Mhm.
that it is for humans. You have to look a certain way or have your relationship a certain way or your house has to be a certain way or success equates to XYZ. And it's the same thing. We put this pressure on our dogs all the time.
Mhm.
And moving away from them actually being individual sentient beings and trying to create something that's a model of perfection. And I think sometimes that can also be reflective in the owner or for how they want our dogs to fit into society. Like, my dog needs to be good with children. My dog needs to come to the coffee shop. My dog needs to XYZ. But if that's not the dog that we have in front of us, a lot of it is about sort of gently aligning those expectations for the owner as well. And again,
Hmm.
doing the best we can with what we have available to us at the time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned a critical point, obviously, about dogs being sentient beings. Do we know if guilt and this guilt, shame, blame business is more of the human end of the lead, or do we know if dogs feel these types of feelings as well? Are they secretly blaming us for things from their dog bed?
It can certainly feel like it at times, but but no, and we see it so much. And again, like on TikTok and social media reels, are like the guilty face.
Mhm,
Our dogs are very much in the moment and present. So when they're responding, and every behavior is information. So a lot of the time when we see that kind of guilt look, it's what we usually refer to as appeasement. So,
mhm,
or a dog trying to avoid conflict or avoid escalation of a situation. So they make themselves look young and vulnerable and a little bit puppyish and like, I'm not going to be a threat to you if you're not going to be a threat to me. So that guilty look is just them responding to what's happening at that moment. Or there may
mhm,
be a prior association. So when we hear people say, "Oh, I came in and they'd raided the dustbin, and before I'd even seen the dustbin, he had that guilty look on his face, so he know he did wrong." It's like dogs
mhm,
don't have a moral compass like humans do. We will do things knowing that we shouldn't do them or that it's wrong or it's not moral, but a dog doesn't think like that. They're just responding in the moment. But there could be a conditioned piece of the expectation of being shouted at when the owner comes home.
mhm,
So it's not that they know they're doing anything wrong, but more of just a response to you in that moment to try and, as I said, avoid conflict escalation.
mhm.
Are they blaming us though? You're the reason I didn't get my walk today. No, no,
Yeah.
we've nothing to suggest that.
Ruby does this amazing like side eye type of look, and obviously for us humans and our human centric minds, we're very much thinking, like as if humans are doing kind of side eye. But I think, like you say, we're totally reading it into it, and she obviously has an expected response then because we have a great giggle about it, and it's all really funny, and it has an expected response for her for sure that like it lightens the situation,
Yep.
or the playfulness stops and we all have a laugh and we calm down, or she probably interprets what happens after she makes this
Yeah,
very
yeah.
particular behavior that she knows what to expect from it. So like you say, it's totally us kind of reading into it in that sense.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And they can completely learn to do these things for the response and the outcome that they want. And we inadvertently teach our dogs behaviors we don't want all the time.
Hmm.
I am terrible for it.
Yeah.
So, even professionals, we get it wrong all the time, and even seasoned professionals. So, my new dog, Callie, um, German Shepherd, so naturally quite vocal and a bit of a gobshite.
Hmm.
Um, didn't do any training or preparation for it. I'm in the middle of doing virtual calls to clients, and she just starts looking at me barking. So I have a little treat stash pot rather than working on these calm, settled behaviors and practicing this as I would ask my clients to do. She's there barking. I'm like, shut up, can I? Just like throwing a little bits
Hmm.
of food. So now she's just like comes over whenever I'm sat here talking. Woo, woo,
Yeah.
woo. So, it's hard to get it right. It's hard to
Yeah.
get it right. And I think when we're in consults with our clients as well, and they're like, oh, my dog never behaves like this usually, like, of course they'd be on their best behavior. But we're just focusing entirely on the dog in front of us.
Hmm.
We're not, that's not real life.
Yeah.
Real life is you have a million and one other things going on. So you're inadvertently going to get things wrong with your dog all the time because I'm sorry to break it to everyone, but you're only human
Yeah.
at the end of
Exactly.
the day.
Exactly. And it's important to remember. Um, Yeah, and of course I knew you were going to say that about dogs. You know, being sentient beings, they do have their own feelings, but maybe guilt and shame and blame are slightly more complex. At least that science has not yet seen that dogs have these feelings. And we did an amazing podcast episode with Susie Walsh on the emotional lives of dogs. So if people are listening in and interested in that whole emotional side from the dog's perspective, it's definitely worth a listen to. But I wanted to dig more into the human shame side now, and how that impacts how we act, I suppose. Do you think that shame sometimes prevents owners from seeking help early on?
Oh, yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. Like when we feel shame, actually, there's studies about this in human behavior as well,
Yeah.
particularly around addiction. um, that people don't want to seek the support because when we feel shame, we feel everything's going to get projected from the other person back into us.
Hmm.
It's confirming the bias you have about yourself that you're a bad person. Because part of
Agree.
shame is convincing yourself of that, or that you've done something wrong, or that you're worthless, or it's that you get all these horrible heavy emotions when it comes to shame. It's a big problem, and it does definitely prevent people from seeking the support, because you spiral and you get lost
Hmm.
when we have feelings of shame. Now I want to be careful how I say this, because this is my understanding of it,
Yeah.
but it might be neurologically a little bit more complex than this. But the emotions of shame are triggered by the amygdala, the kind of central part of the brain responsible for kind of fight or flight responses. And any dog trainers or consultants listening will be familiar with the amygdala and how that works. So when the amygdala is activated, the prefrontal cortex can't operate. So when we're in a state of shame, we literally cannot thought process effectively. So we can't think things through. So finding resolution or being able to work through it unsupported is almost impossible
Hmm.
when we're in that state of shame, because that survival part and that thinking things through, thought processing part, they can't operate at the
Yeah.
same time. So
I don't know if
it
it's connected.
definitely.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if it's connected, but it's interesting the way that we say, fight or flight. And also we say running away from our problems, this flight piece, this kind of,
Oh,
okay,
nice.
I
Yeah.
don't want to deal with it head on. And would that be fight? Would that be confronting the issue? Like I've never really connected those two thoughts, but I think maybe now that they're controlled by the same place and the same mechanism in a way, that there could be kind of that we've known this for generations, that actually they're very very connected.
That was a lovely connection. I am taking that and claiming it as my own. Thanks.
Absolutely. It's a Catherine exclusive. No, that's amazing. um Very good. So now I was also thinking a little bit about, the cultural and societal expectations. Do they contribute to guilt in dog ownership or guardianship as well? What do the neighbors think? What do other people expect of us? What do the cafe owners expect of us and our dogs?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. And again, I suppose this, excuse me, relates a little bit to when I was talking about the kind of expectations of what a perfect dog is. You see all these lovely videos of dogs being so sweet and cute and well behaved, and you see dogs in public and they're all sitting quietly outside of coffee shops, or they're all going to the marina market. But what I see when I'm in a lot of these spaces is there are dogs who can cope. Overwhelmingly, those dogs aren't coping in the first place. So
Hmm.
they're usually like quite shut down and suppressed, but it does, and it paints an image of this is what dog ownership is and this is what it should be like. What you don't see are the dog owners with reactive dogs running around the place, barking, screaming, lunging at other dogs or people, because we can't be in public. We have to be in
Hmm.
different places with our dogs. So there's an expectation that if your dog has a behavior problem, that we can just work through that and make them perfectly fit into society and be entirely neutral and not cause any problems. And there's
Hmm.
definitely, oh my goodness, the embarrassment that a lot of clients express that they feel when their dog's behaving a certain way, because they feel, as I said, the dog's an extension of them and their worth. So, unhelpful comments of people shouting, "Oh, you should train your dog." And they're like, well, this is what training looks like. You don't train a dog who doesn't have any need to be trained in any way, shape, or form. And yeah, and people who don't have dogs or get dogs, it's difficult, but we just can't expect our dogs to be these perfect robotic neutral machines in
Yeah.
public.
Yeah.
And the expectations are really high, and the expectations, particularly in a country like Ireland, are very high when there's no base education about dogs.
Mhm.
There's pretty much nothing in place to help produce healthy, good dogs and educate owners about what dog ownership is. So obviously when you go to other countries, or if you're in Germany or somewhere, and you've got a
Mhm.
culture of really well behaved dogs being able to cope and exist in those environments, it's because there's better legislation around responsible dog ownership in the first place, and being able to prepare our dogs for that. And that doesn't exist here. It's just like, let's wave a magic wand and poof, my dog is able to cope with all the crazy things that are happening in the world around them. But it can be so soul destroying for clients when their dog is reacting, for example, in public, or not able to do certain things, and walks become stressful and they hate taking their dog out,
Mhm.
and not helped by people in public. Even silly throwaway comments like, "Oh, who's taking who for a walk?" when it's somebody
Yeah.
who's actually really, really struggling. Um, and as a population, we're just not approaching these conversations from like a sort of trauma informed approach way. We
Mhm.
look and we judge instantly. We don't think about what's going on behind the scenes or what's happening for that person or that animal. So it can be really, really, really hard for people to navigate. I would imagine in many instances it's the breaking point as well for people when they feel judged or shamed by others, or when others are blaming them for their dog's behavior. The breaking point where they're like, I can't do this anymore, because it's not just
Yeah.
become about the dog in public, it's become about that person's sense of self-worth,
Mhm.
essentially.
And I think you touched on so many interesting points there. Number one, the people that don't understand anything about dogs. We've all had that situation. I remember clearly, it's a couple of months ago now, but I was with Ruby on a drizzly morning in the park, so there were very few people around. And I completely left, like we were off the path and completely left her do her kind of sniffary business, right? It was 100% a walk for her. It was drizzling. I definitely did not want to be there. We were doing it for Ruby. So she had complete control of where we were going within reason. Obviously, she was still on a long line. And a couple passed, and I know he didn't mean it in a bad way. This gentleman passing, he meant it in a way of human connection. He just wanted to say something instead of just good morning. He was saying, "Oh, who's taking who for a walk?" And luckily, I had an answer ready and was like, "Well, it's her walk. It certainly isn't mine. I don't know why you're out here on a morning like this morning without a dog, but this one's for her." And he laughed and moved on with his day, and we were all happy. But that could really affect someone that was really struggling
Yeah.
with their dog, and it came from a completely innocent place. I'm sure he's a lovely man. I'm sure he had great intentions of just having a bit of a giggle with someone in public that he doesn't know. Um, but it was just interesting, the way that his expectation was clear, that we should have been having this very Hollywood kind of, bouncing along walk on a short leash kind of situation, and Ruby was having the time of her life deciding where she was going to sniff off into the long grass. But yeah, it was just complete different expectation versus reality for this gentleman. Hopefully my comment back to him kind of opened his eyes to be like, yeah, actually kind of makes sense. I
Yeah.
hope that was how he uptook on it. Um, and you also mentioned a little bit about, social media and everything. And I think we're all guilty of this, right? Of those of us that are lucky enough to be able to bring our dogs out into public and take photos, short video clips, etc. Like, I know and love lots of the, let's say, doggy influencers or dogs that you would regularly see on social media,
Yeah.
including our own. Um, and I know that there's a treat on the other side of that camera. And I know that it's a 30-second clip or less, probably. Um, I know that it might be the second or third take at it. And I know that that dog is going to do something that's not sitting pretty in just 2 seconds afterwards. No matter what it is, it's probably something that's not drastically terrible, but it's not something that's making it to social media. So yeah, I think we can so easily fall into the trap of believing that like all these other dogs out there are sitting on cocktail sofas all their lives. And it's just not true.
No. And actually, it's another thing that we hear so frequently is owners saying like, oh, it's just like I'm out and about walking, I see other people with their dogs behaving so brilliantly. And again, like we are psychologically wired to find
Hmm.
threat in our
Yeah.
environment or to find negative pieces.
Hmm.
And if I was out with a client and they've said that, I mean, literally, I remember being down Tremor Valley Park and like, look at that dog up there. Like, I bet that's what I want. I was like, that's one of my clients, pal. You've no idea. Like, that dog's lovely out here, but yeah, can't have anybody come to the house because
Hmm.
he'll eat them. So we're like, everybody has their little pieces,
Yeah.
but it's just when we are so overwhelmed and stressed and frustrated,
Hmm.
all we can focus on is what we haven't got at that particular moment in time as well, which can be hard for people.
Hmm.
Be really hard.
Having another little bash at social media, then we often see videos from dog professionals um, that are obviously let's lay it out correctly. So they're trying to get engagement. They're trying to get a point across in under 90 seconds because otherwise the algorithm isn't going to like them and nobody's going to watch the whole thing. They're obviously doing it for interaction, and a lot of the time they're probably trying to help as well, to the best of their abilities. But I think a lot of, and we do this as nutritionists as well, so this is not just on everyone. It's difficult to break down the level of complexity into 90 seconds or less. um I think a lot of people must struggle with a lot of these training videos and training tips that they might come across online and see
Yeah.
how simple it is, this 2.5 step plan. And it's like, well, that mightn't be relevant to the individual. Do you see a lot of this coming up?
Oh, so much of it is
Hmm.
painful.
Yeah.
But I mean, you do see the good ones that can be like a 60-second clip and it's done over a journey over like a year or something. Or like,
Yeah.
look at the transformation. Isn't this amazing? They're great. But there are some that are great and they show the process. They also show where it's going wrong.
Hmm.
And but from a training video perspective, there's no cookie cutter.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of allergic and quite anti, this is how you teach a dog to XYZ.
Hmm.
Because no, that's how you teach that dog to do
Yeah.
XYZ. How if dogs are as individual as ourselves. So
Hmm.
I have certain preferences for the way I learn and absorb information, and you would have yours, and everything's going to be different.
Hmm.
And the day that's in it, and how your dog is feeling. Is there anything underlying going on? And it sets up massively unrealistic expectations that this is what you do to get your dog doing X, Y, Z behaviors, particularly because I think a lot of people now there are some that are, if you want to teach your dog to do a middle or something, there's some basic step things that you can follow there. The danger in it is, when they're giving advice on things that are more behavioral in terms of,
Hmm.
if your dog has a behavior problem, if your dog is reactive, if your dog has separation related behaviors, if your dog has bitten somebody, you know, and also the training videos. Have you ever noticed how a lot of trainers have collies and German shepherds or like Malinois?
Yeah.
Like me, I've
Yeah.
always had
Yep,
Shepherdie
we do.
Malinois.
Yeah.
It makes us look good at our job. They're like
Mhm.
hardwired to do everything we say. So it's
Yeah.
way easier working with like a German Shepherd than it is, say, a Beagle. Do you
Mhm.
know? So it's not just the reason we have them, but I like to think it is. But,
Well,
but
it makes a
every
lot of
dog's
sense if
gonna.
you if you want to work with dogs and you get a dog that wants to work, I mean, it does sound like, a match made in
Yeah,
heaven. And no, it's not going to work
yeah,
out with every individual, but your chances are probably higher. Like you say, if you get a dog that's not that interested in working for you and would rather
yeah,
just be curled up by the fire, you're probably going to like it less if you're someone that really wants to
yeah,
teach things and work with dogs.
definitely. And every dog, like ourselves, we have different motivations.
Hmm.
So one person might work really well for a chocolate cake, and another person might work really well for a bottle of wine. Do you know,
Yeah.
it's the same for our dogs, and it's not just even working out what the treats are, what are their general motivations. Obviously, particularly in Ireland, and I think the UK's as well, there's like the explosion in like spaniel mixes, like
Hmm.
and poodle mixes, and we get a lot of these types of dogs, and their intrinsic needs for many of them is I put my nose down and I go off and I find things.
Hmm.
They don't need a human telling them what to do because they're
Yeah.
just hardwired for these particular behaviors. Dogs like this in the background, she's hardwired to be like, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So for
Yeah. It's
every dog, training is going to look different. Every
yeah.
dog is going to look different. And it's just if you're struggling because you're trying to achieve this like TikTok perfection,
Hmm.
it's just so much more complex than that. You've got to get to the bottom of so much, and yeah, it's not helpful. It's not
Yeah.
helpful. Like social media ruins expectations for dogs as much as it does for humans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you mentioned as well a piece about, the environment or the situation that a dog is in, if because we're so human centric here, we might as well bring it down to the human level. I think, you know, think about I think for someone listening in, the way I like to think of it is, think about, would you go into a church, an empty church, and shout yeehaw? Would you do it in a full church? No, you probably wouldn't. Most people wouldn't. Would you do it at a country and western concert after a couple of beverages? Probably. Would you do it at a line, and there's just like so many ways that we don't think about how our own behavior changes. Um, and I think it's so relevant because even as humans, depending on the context, we act really, really differently. We present
Yep.
differently in different situations, and it's just not going to happen for us in other situations. I think even when you think about like stage fright and things like that, like would you get up and, I don't know, say a prayer in front of your grandmother? Maybe. Would you do it in front of, Wembley Arena? Maybe not. And
Yeah.
there's so many different levels of it. And I think when we're looking at our dogs, we see our normal human life. Can you walk down a street? Can you walk through a shopping center? But for our dogs, they see it as very different context. It's not like the normal human world to them. It's all different levels of complexity, right?
Yeah, context is everything, everything.
Hmm.
And when behavior is already so multifaceted and variable, and it's not static, and then we throw in the context and we throw in the environment and we throw in how much that changes second
Hmm.
by second,
Yeah.
all the behavioral outputs are gonna be affected by all those minute little pieces going on around them for every dog, for every dog.
Yeah.
How the dog responds in that situation, that's where we need to dig deeper and not
Yeah.
necessarily just treat these as training things. But yeah, there's so much pressure on dogs, and it's it's really interesting when you think about it. Even like we even know coming into spring, like the
Mhm.
changes in the seasons affect dogs. So
Yeah.
even like the variables are enormous, and expecting our dogs to behave as static and not be affected or feel any of these things at any point is it's completely unrealistic because that's just not the case.
Yeah, definitely. And going back, I suppose, a little bit to the client side, particularly clients that are feeling this shame or maybe a little bit defensive about their dog's behavior and what's been going on. How do you approach that? And how do you try to help them progress?
The first thing and I always talk to my mentees about this as well, is practicing the art of active listening. So giving them a space at first to just say how they feel. It's how I start all my consultations. It's be like,
Mhm.
okay, Killian, just tell me from the bottom of your heart, complete transparency. You're not being judged here. What is life like with Ruby? And it all comes out. And just listening, 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 and validating. So validating their frustrations and their stress, completely
Mhm.
non-judgmental. Always be trauma informed aware. So using that trauma informed approach in conversation in the back of your mind at all times, thinking about, we don't know this person's day to day, we don't know their history, we don't know what's going on for them, nor do we the dogs.
Mhm.
So really removing any judgment or blame from it from your end and validating and naming those emotions. That must be really frustrating. That must feel really stressful. And giving them that space to feel heard. But also, I love throwing in a story of my own
Mhm.
failure.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of the time, it's really funny. Whenever I open up a consultation with somebody, they look like they're about to get told off by a teacher. They're
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
and it's like, lads, relax. Have you met me? They're like,
Yeah.
just let's just talk. It's fine. Nobody's done anything wrong here. Nobody's going to get a cane across the back of the wrists.
Yeah.
Um, and as soon as people start feeling safe and supported and opening up, they open up so much more. I always tell them about how I get it wrong. I always give
Mhm.
them experiences like with my darling boy Indy, who people who follow me on social media probably aware he passed away a couple of years ago, but
Mhm.
oh Jesus, did I get things wrong? And he frustrated me. I could have hung him. I didn't want
Mhm.
him. I couldn't bond with him. Took me
Yeah.
over a year, like. So having those lived experiences yourself and sharing those with your client as well,
Mhm.
after we've listened, after we've validated, and then we connect.
Yeah. And it's that level of trust probably can help you to then,
All
really start making some progress.
all about trust. Oh my
Mhm.
goodness. All about trust. And you're developing a professional relationship. No relationship can be built without trust.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
if we blame owners, and I hear from some of my clients when they've had previous trainers or behaviorists, they tell me it's my fault or what I'm doing wrong. Nobody learns like that. We know as professionals that our dogs don't learn like that. Our dogs learn when we're telling them when they're getting it right.
Mhm. Yeah.
And nobody wants to
Absolutely.
work for the boss who tells them they're getting it wrong all the time. You want to go with the boss who says, that's not how we do it, but let me show you how, and this is how we get that right.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So on that note, and thinking now as well, like to kind of wrap things up with the most complex part of it all, what mindset shifts do you think need to happen? Firstly, for professionals, I guess, but also secondly for owners slash guardians to move away from this world of blame and emotion and maybe kind of reading a lot of human emotion into situations and understand the real job at hand so that they can progress.
Yeah, so there's definitely ways we can reframe language for sure
Hmm.
by shifting away from that. But I think the most important thing is rather than looking at the situation,
Hmm.
approach everything with curiosity, approach everything with a why. I wonder why. Why is this happening? So I think for owners, rather than going thinking like my dog was pulling on the walk and lunging at other dogs, and this makes me feel stressed, to get into the habit of asking yourself, why was my dog having such a bad day yesterday?
Hmm.
So shifting that mindset into exploration, investigation, getting to the bottom of it, rather than just setting up a kind of training protocol or something to deal with it as the behavior arises in a reactive way.
Hmm.
I think like training as a process is reactive in itself, but that's why particularly in these cases, the behavior work is so important, because we're looking more from the proactive, or the why. How is this happening, and how are we preventative? Sorry, not proactive. How are we preventative, rather than just reactive? And just the curiosity lens, I think, is a big one for owners, and helping them understand that behavior is not good or bad. Behavior is just behavior. It's just functional.
Hmm.
So when we see a behavior, let's name what the behavior is, and then let's look at why the behavior occurred. And instead of thinking, I can't do this again, I can't walk my dog tomorrow, after that, I can't let that happen again, to think more of what can I do to change to prevent that from happening again.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
always looking at curiosity and prevention, I think.
yeah, it makes it a lot more manageable as well, doesn't it? Because it's, you're kind of breaking it down into how can we live a great life together, if you kind of look at it like that and say, be a bit curious, I suppose, like you say, about, how can we have a great old time together and, live harmoniously and do all the things we want to do. How can I make you comfortable enough to be able to do that? And what kind of, where do we meet in the middle, isn't it?
Yeah. Replacing blame with curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. No, it's definitely a really, really interesting topic. It's great to know that at least our dogs aren't blaming us. But it's the human condition that we have to human condition and the human struggle, I suppose, that we have to deal with blame and guilt and shame and all of this fun
Yeah.
stuff. But I think once you get over that and start building, trust with your trainer, with your behaviorist, with your dog, then I think there's great opportunity to move forward as well. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
such a huge topic. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me about it. I think it's going to help, deflate that stressful bubble for a lot of people. So thank you for that. It's so appreciated, and we hope to have you back on very, very soon.
Thank you. That was really good fun. I love that one.
Thank you. And once again, a huge thank you to Catherine for coming on and joining us and sharing with this quite complex topic this week. And thank you, dear listener, for coming along and joining us for that conversation as well. We would, of course, love if you could like and subscribe and share this podcast wherever you can. Also, give us a little message in the comments wherever you listen to this podcast episode, and let us know if you've come across any pangs of guilt or seen some shame across the dog community. I think sharing about this type of topic, and the more we can discuss it and give it a label, the easier things become for us as a whole community. Of course, you can find more about Catherine and her links to websites and social media and all the rest of that, as well as links to Ruby Reese and to dognutrition.ie down in the show notes. There you will also find our website, where you can find more details about our upcoming course specific for dog nutrition. So with that, thank you very much once again for listening in, and we hope to have you join us for another episode very, very soon.